Hello and welcome to the podcast Raw Chatter. I am your host, speaking Vicky Midwood, health coach and the addiction eliminator, and I talk all things health, mind, brain, body, hormones, exercise, just all over general well-being. And today's topic is all about resistance. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Does it very much depend on context and circumstances? And how can we use it to help us? And how do we know when we need to stop resisting and change trajectory? So those are all of the things that I'm going to be covering today. And the reason why I wanted to cover this topic today is because I'm very, very fortunate with it, with the clients that I work with. I don't just work with them online. I get to visit them sometimes once a month, sometimes not as frequently as that. But in person and hands-on stuff is something that I do. Now, when I say hands-on, I don't mean massaging and that kind of thing. But I am a Reiki practitioner. I am very much intuitive in terms of energy and what have you. I do things like TRE, which is a form of stress release, and also EMDR, which is, for those people who don't know, it's helping people to tune in more to their emotions and feelings and let go of resistance to certain things, or to just recognize that what is going on can be reframed in a way that's not so frightening. I'm not going to go into those modalities. Feel free to Google them if you want to find out more about them. But I'm also a qualified fitness instructor, personal trainer, and that means that I very much will help people to make sure that if they're doing exercise, that they're actually doing it in a way that works with their body and not against their body. So that means executing moves with really good form and tuning in that just because it's good form doesn't mean it looks perfect. It has to be feeling right for their body. In other words, they need to know what muscles they're supposed to be utilizing and where they should be feeling it, so that they can know if they're in the right position for them. Because, as most of you know, everybody's body is built slightly differently and everybody moves their body slightly differently. And what we don't want to do is get people to look perfect, but that actually create injury or some kind of resistance within the body. And so this topic of resistance is an interesting one, because I've touched on this before, that I very much want to get away from black and white thinking. In fact, my blog for this month is about why we need to get away from this or that, this either or, black or white, resisting or not resisting. And we've got to look at and, because we can resist certain things and still feel empowered. Or we can feel that we're resisting things and that leaves us massively unempowered. And what I like to look at is almost degrees of us feeling uncomfortable, but allowing us to recognize that it's still okay. And knowing that actually, when we resist too much, we're not doing ourselves any favors. But if we don't resist certain things at all, we're also not doing ourselves any favors. So let me put this into context. So I'm, as I say, I'm lucky enough that I can go and visit some of my clients in person, and I'm not going to mention what their issues were, but what we recognize is that a lot of the thinking that happens for all of us, because we're all humans and we all live in the kind of the same world. Okay, it's not exactly the same. We're in different countries, so we have different ways of behaving, different expectations. But in general, how our brain tends to think about some things is pretty much similar across the board. And often what happens is, when I get people to do something like TRE, which is a trauma release kind of therapy that they've never done before, and I explain to them what may happen, but it might not happen for them, particularly on the first session, a great deal, then they're obviously feeling very skeptical, right? And there is going to be a sense of, there is a reason for this. Because we want to have a reason for something that doesn't seem logical. And the reason that I want to pick up on this is because our body knows what it needs to do if we just let it and stop resisting. But when it comes to our head tries to logicalize things. And how our body works as far as our head is concerned isn't logical. Okay. And it's not that your body doesn't know what to do. Your body knows exactly what to do. It's just our brain has been programmed because of society, because of parents, because of our upbringing, because of things that we've seen, experienced, heard, etc. over the years, decades, however old you are. We have a sense of things being right. So we're back to this black and white rubbish. Things being right or things being wrong, or there be a correct way of doing things and a way that's detrimental. And therefore, we get ourselves into a right pickle when we try and logicalize things that are not necessarily logical, but they just are. And that's a tough one. People resist that because when I invite them to just be, that means not do anything. Not do anything physical, not do anything practical, but just literally be. Most people resist that massively because there is a part of them that goes, well, this is pointless. What is this going to achieve? I'm wasting time. All of that kind of stuff. And this is where we got to recognize that our inability to just be is part of the reason why we feel very resistant to doing things differently, to allowing ourselves space to actually get to know how we work best. Because there's this idea that we all have that we have to know instantly how something works and why, and that we have to always be in some way, shape, or form productive or doing something. And so many people feel resistance to giving themselves time and space to switch off, to relax, and to just be. Now, whether just being for you is out in the sun at the moment in the UK, we've got some amazing weather, and maybe because it is sunny and maybe the garden is looking nice, or you're in a park where it just feels good to be there, maybe it's easier for you to actually just be in a space like that. But often when we're in our own homes or in specific rooms in our own homes that have an energetic feel to them, and they do, it's much, much harder to allow ourselves to just be and not to resist the urge to pick up this, to pick up the phone, not to resist the urge to start fiddling around with a loose bit of cotton on your top, or an imaginary fleck of lint on your trousers, or start looking around the room and going, oh, actually, maybe I should get up there and give that a bit of a clean, or maybe I should rearrange the furniture. We're always telling ourselves in some way, shape, or form that we have to be, if we're not actually doing something in and of that moment, we have to be planning doing something. And what I want all of us to recognize is that that is not how we evolved to be the species, the successful humans that we are. We actually evolved, and we're still alive today, having gotten through all kinds of things in terms of how the world that we live in, the planet that we're on, has changed. We've had all kinds of global warming issues. We've had all kinds of different terrain. We've had different ways, different disasters, natural ones and man-made ones that we've managed to get through and survive. There's been all kinds of viruses and bugs and illness that potentially could have wiped us out, but no, we're still here. And so this is where we have to look at, well, how is it that we have still survived then? Well, it's because we allowed ourselves, or some of us allowed ourselves, to be able to stop and just be. Because it's in the space that we can actually be more of an observer. And we can actually allow ourselves to tune in to us, to what feels good, to connect more to nature, to connect more to our body. And when we allow ourselves the time and the space to do that, it's much easier to recognize that in our busyness, in our always telling ourselves we have to be productive, we have to be achieving something, we have to be doing, we can recognize that when we give ourselves space, we allow ourselves the opportunity to be more creative. We allow those ideas to flow. We allow ourselves to actually get honest with what really does feel good for us and actually what doesn't. And that's allowing you to have the space and the time to give yourself the space and the time. And so when I go see my clients in person, they have no option, because I am going to set out exactly what we are going to do in our time together. And they are usually not in a space and a place where they're going to resist it, because I don't tell them in advance what we're going to do. When we know what's coming, our brain has the opportunity to start going into catastrophe mode, to start what-ifing, to start thinking about all of the terrible things that could go wrong and how maybe embarrassed we're going to be or feel, or how silly we're going to look, or what will other people think of us, and all of that society conditioned crap that comes into our heads. Whereas if we don't know what is coming up, and you're literally led through something one step at a time, and you do the first step and you don't know what the next step is, you're just allowed to be in that first step, and then gently you're moved forward onto the next step, and then onto the next step, and then onto the next step. What you recognize is when you just allow yourself to go and you don't resist each of those baby steps, suddenly you've gone from here to here. And it was nowhere near as hard. In fact, it was usually quite fun. But if I'd have said here, this is what we're going to do, and you're going to end up here, there'd have been massive resistance here, because those stories in your head would have been going, no, no. And it's literally like this. You're wanting to go there, but you're allowing yourself to push you back. And here's the thing, and I'm doing this on purpose, because what we resist will persist. And so the more you're pushing that stuff away, the more that stuff's going to push back at you. And what do you end up doing? You end up in a fight. And so many people talk to me about having this fight in their own heads about food, about alcohol, about exercise, about what they're telling themselves they're allowed to do, what they should do, about their own confidence, about whether they're allowed to say how they feel without being judged by other people, whether it's okay to ask for what they want. There's a lot of what-ifing and yes-butting goes on. And I've said this on a podcast before, but but means bollocks. But means I am resisting. But means I am going to tell you why my way and not changing is going to be better for me. Because. But and because. Ah, yes. However. All of those things are just showing me that there is resistance. And why do we resist? Because we're scared. We resist because it's unfamiliar. We resist because we know that path oh so well. It feels safe. It feels comfortable. Even though we don't like the outcome, we keep on doing it. Classic example of this is for somebody who says they're creating a routine and they've recognized that if they start their morning in a certain way, they actually do function better and feel better, and it's a win-win and it's great. Fantastic. But then what happens is something will crop up that they've decided needs to prioritize what they were doing first thing in the morning, and they start to let go of the steps that they were honing oh so well in their morning routine. And before you know it, they are back to feeling how they felt before. Now, often it's more difficult to go back and redo something when you've had a taste of it and then you've let it go than it is to just keep it going. And it's that start, stop that makes us feel that we're resisting doing it again. Because look what happened last time. But this is where we've got to recognize only by you doing something and then you stopping doing it and then you recognizing actually how beneficial it was. That's the best way of helping you to realize that you need to resist going back to the old behaviors, that you need to really get on board that resisting is not always a bad thing. because this is what I often see people talking about. Resistance is something that is looked on as a negative, and it's not always. If we can resist going backwards because backwards behaviors do not serve us, then resistance is a good thing, right? And very soon, resistance will then become a choice. But initially, we need to embrace it. So if we're resisting hitting that snooze button, high five. That's a good thing, right? If your behavior pattern has always been, oh, I just have another 5 minutes, and you stop doing that, you are resisting that familiar, safe pattern of behavior that actually left you chasing your tail and feeling that you never had enough time in the morning. Well, then that kind of resistance is awesome. We want it. On the flip side, if we're resisting changing our language because what will people think if I start to sound differently? Well, then you're going to struggle because energetically you are not going to be honest, and you're probably not going to be actually saying what you need to say, or sometimes you're probably not even saying what you mean. You're saying what sounds nice or what's expected. And you probably saw my lip curling when I said the word nice, right? Nice is just a horrible place to be, right? Nobody wants to be nice. I don't want to be nice. I want to be kind. I want to be seen to be considerate, empathetic, sympathetic at times, right? I want to be seen to be confident and open minded, but I never ever want to be referred to as nice. Nice is wishy washy. Nice means, oh, I'll just be malleable and I'll let people use me and I'll fit in wherever and I'll kind of be a bit of a chameleon. So you're not actually really quite sure who is the real Vicky. I don't want to be nice, right? I want to be me. I want to be Vicky. Not, oh, Vicky, is she that nice lady with the blonde hair? No, that is not who I want to be, right? Because nice means that nobody really knows what you stand for. Nobody really knows who you are for sure. And when you are changing your identity, when you cease to be the person whose life is ruled by food, by exercise, by alcohol, by your outward appearance, by whether you dare ask for what you want, whether you are going to put yourself forward for the promotion at work or for an award, and you're no longer worried about whether you are going to be seen to be big-headed or arrogant, that actually you can own what you've done and your achievements and just be pretty damn proud of them, but nothing else. When you're that person, you recognize that you have got to let go of resisting certain things. And that means you have got to let go of always thinking about what other people think of you. And a lot of people use language like, oh, I'm stubborn. It's my stubborn streak. Well, if you are proud and smiling when you say you're stubborn, and I've heard this so many times. Well, I take after my dad, or I take after my mum. They're stubborn too. They always were. It's not something to wear as a badge of honor. If it's stopping you from changing, if it's stopping you from taking the steps that actually you need to be taking to have the life that you want, to have the body that you feel good in, then why be proud of something that isn't serving you? I would be dropping it like a flipping hot potato and going, thank God, thank God I can break that stupid stubbornness that appeared to run in the family. I am going to break the mold and actually be the person that I need and want to be so that I can have the life I want to live, knowing that it's going to serve me from a business point of view, knowing that it's going to serve me from a friendship point of view, from a financial point of view, from a health point of view, and also from a family point of view. Because when we resist being the person who steps up and starts to change things in a family, we're all just going to get more of the same. And one thing that I do know for sure, considering the amount of time now that I've worked in this field of helping people with their body image issues, with their food, alcohol, size, confidence, self-worth, all of that stuff, anxiety, OCD, they all come from the same kind of issues that crop up. It's a family affair, right? We have these issues because they become our solutions, our ways of coping, our ways of getting through life, our ways of it not feeling too hard. And this is why we resist change, because we think if we resist what we know, it's going to feel too hard. Here's what I want you to take away from this. When you let go and you stop resisting the things that do not serve you, the things that actually don't make you feel good about you, that is actually when you realize life becomes fun. It's not hard. It's actually joyous when you allowed yourself to feel free and in alignment with what you actually really need and what you actually really want. But only by doing it can you actually find that out. And therein lies the biggest piece in the resistance puzzle. It's the actual doing it, because we can talk about it. Yes, I'm going to. Oh, yes, I will. And we can write down things like, affirmations that kind of go, I will get up every morning at this, and I am going to, and I am the person who says what they need to say. And these are great. But if you don't implement them, if they're just words, if they're just something that you keep saying, but you don't actually take action on, then you're never going to actually be able to experience it. And if you don't create the evidence, then your brain is going to keep on making sure that you do what you've always done, because your brain has one thing and one thing only that it wants to do, and that's stop you from dying. Right? That's your main brain function. It goes back to survival. And if you've created a habit of doing something once a day or something multiple times a day, then your brain very handily, instead of you having to relearn how to do that thing every time, it stores it in a specific part that remembers, it automates it for you. But it also believes that because you do this thing so often, it must be absolutely vital for your survival. So when you stop doing it, then your brain is going to go, oh my God, we're going to die. Of course, you're not going to die, right? But you are going to feel definitely uncomfortable. You're going to feel that, oh, it would be just so much easier if I did what I've always done. Even though I don't like it, you know what? I can deal with it. I can put up with it. Actually, and then we go, oh, it's actually, do you know what? It's really not that bad. It's not that bad. And we start convincing ourselves that it's okay, really. We were just maybe making too much of a big thing out of it when we said we wanted to change it. Perhaps we don't really want to change it. We can just learn to live with it and all will be fine. That's BS. That is total bunkum, folks. And you know it when you're saying it, right? Because how do I know? Because your body language changes. And this is where you can't kid your body. So I'm coming back full circle to recognizing that what I said at the beginning, our body will do what it needs to do. It will adapt. It will give you clues. It will make you feel things or want to do certain things that don't seem to align with your logical head. Because what we need to do to look after our body and our brain, which remember is not separate because it lives in your body, you need to honor it, because when you don't, that is where this resistance is going to keep on feeling like a fight. And if you keep on fighting, it's going to feel exhausting. It's going to create stress. And the more stress we feel, the more we're likely to make decisions that are the decisions that we've always made before, because they are familiar and they're going to provide a little bit of stress release, which is why we end up going around in this vicious cycle of not allowing ourselves to change. And I say those words on purpose because it is about allowing. It's about giving yourself permission. And it's about recognizing that, yeah, you will feel uncomfortable. And the only reason you feel uncomfortable is because it's unfamiliar and it's unknown. But you know what? Everything was at one point. At one point in your life, every single thing that you take for granted now, like being able to dress yourself, like knowing how to open a cupboard, like knowing how drawers work, how to hold a pen, how to deal with a phone, how to drive a car if you do drive, how to dress yourself. All of those things, at one point, you did not know. They were unfamiliar. They were uncomfortable. And what did you have to do? You had to keep on doing them. You had to keep on repeating them. Why? So that you could create evidence for your brain that it was safe, that these things weren't going to cause you to die. that they were necessary for your survival. And so when we think about habits that we've created and we keep repeating, and then we decide that they're no good for us, that is the same process. Whether the habit is beneficial to us or whether it's detrimental, it doesn't matter. At some point, that habit was unknown, it was unfamiliar, and you had to teach yourself to get familiar with it and to know it. And so when you recognize that it's just a process, and so if you let go of something that has become very known and very familiar to you, and you choose to do something different completely, it's going to feel unknown and unfamiliar, but only for a short period of time. If, however, we keep on resisting, that feeling of discomfort, that feeling of not being in alignment, this sensation that a lot of my clients talk to me about, and that I definitely felt, like there's something missing, like there's some kind of a hole that you're trying to fill inside, whether it's with food or with alcohol, or whether it's with trying to make your body look a different shape and size to just try and fill this hole. What you're not recognizing is that you're just out of alignment with what your body needs and what your brain's telling you. And once you can get back into alignment, it's like that hole just gets filled in. And so what I want you to take on board is that if you are feeling resistance to making a change for the good, then no, it is just a feeling. And it's usually the thoughts that you're attaching to that change, whether you're catastrophizing them, whether you're amplifying them and making them absolutely huge, that is probably the issue. And that's where ideally you want to have a conversation with somebody who has done the thing that you want to do, so that they can help you to recognize that if you just take baby steps in the right order, starting where you're at, then it's actually going to be much more straightforward and much less painful than you think. And also want you to take on board that resisting certain things is really positive. Yeah. If you are resisting drinking in an environment where drinking is the norm and the culture, because you know how you feel the next morning, and you don't want to do that to yourself. Maybe it makes you completely forgetful. Maybe it makes you feel that actually you're going to waste a whole day because you just won't be able to function the following day. And because of that knowing, you are resisting people trying to push you into doing something that you don't want to, then that's where you need to celebrate your ability to resist. We also need to look at, resisting always doing what you've always done, especially with family members, because it's not beneficial for you to put on a persona for your family that is out of alignment to the person that you are in business or with your friends or with your partner. It's hard work. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of stress. It makes you feel uncomfortable. And that is when you are more likely then to fall out with yourself and to come away from that situation and then ruminate on it and go over it and wish and kick yourself that you didn't say something and you had the opportunity. Once again, you didn't take it. Stop and recognize that you can do it, but it takes planning and it takes practice. And that is something that I have to do with my clients. You have to write stuff down. We have to role play. We have to get used to hearing ourselves saying something in a different way to certain people. And we have to then be ready for how it's going to be received. And this is often why there's resistance to us saying something to family members that maybe we've been wanting to say for years, but we haven't done, because you're terrified of how they're going to take it. Well, let's bust that one out of the water if we can, because you are not responsible for other people's feelings. And I know as kids, we've been brought up to believe that we are. And I want to home this in. I want to shout it from the rooftops. The only person's feelings you are responsible for are your own, because you are not in somebody else's head. And you do not know their interpretation, their perception, their associations, just what they are going to do with the words that you say to them. And it's not your responsibility to stop them from building up some kind of emotional resilience, some way of dealing with their own feelings. You can't. They have to do it for themselves. It's your job to build up your own emotional resilience. It's not your job to basically parent theirs. And if they don't have the skills, then it's up to them to try and learn them. But it's not up to you to teach them, certainly not without being asked. But what you can do is start to recognize that no matter what the response is to whatever you say or whatever you do differently, you then have to be consistent and not back down and not go back into just being the person you've always been with them because it's easy. Resist going back to easy in those situations and allow yourself to be positive and to be firm and to stand your ground and to follow through with action if needs be. Because you will benefit, and eventually, though they may not see it in the moment, they will potentially benefit too. So, to kind of summarize that, resistance is not always bad. Resisting the things that are harmful and hurtful to you, resisting the things that make you feel out of alignment with yourself, resistance to things that your body is asking for and it needs, that is the stuff that we need to be aware of. Recognizing that resistance can be something that can be freeing. But also, if we're resisting change, if we're resisting doing things differently so that we can feel better about ourselves, then that is the resistance that we need to recognize is never going to be as hard as we tell ourselves it's going to be. Especially if we reach out and look at somebody who has gotten what we want, who has been where we are, and who knows how to get there. And you can reach out for me at any time to have a conversation about that stuff, folks. Resistance is not something that is necessarily easy to implement or to let go of. But I can tell you, it is worth putting in the effort, right? And just because something takes effort doesn't mean it's hard. It's just effort. And again, I will repeat this because I've said it a number of times, but anything that you have that you really value, that's taken some effort for you to get there, whether it's a really positive relationship or a strong friendship, whether we're talking about any kind of accolade that you have or any kinds of qualification that you have or anything that you know you are good at, that's taken effort. Okay. And it wasn't always easy at times, but you persisted. Why? Because you wanted to feel good. And ultimately, isn't that what we all want? To feel good about ourselves, about who we are being, about the person that we are. I went to a 70th birthday party this weekend, and I'll just wrap up with this. You may have seen the pictures on social media. And this is the lady who's had so many issues in her life that she's even thinking about writing a book and potentially a film about her life, because that's how interesting and how many life-changing events she has gone through. Now, if she hadn't at times practiced resistance and pursued what she wanted to do, there's no way she would be where she is. If at times she hadn't let go of resistance, she wouldn't be where she is. In fact, she wouldn't probably be with us, to be quite honest, the things that she's gone through. And so this is where she is a living example of somebody who, it doesn't matter her size and her shape, right? It matters how she makes people feel. And every single person in that room was just exuding admiration and love for this human being because of who she is and how she is. And did she look and feel good in her outfit? Yes, because that's important to her. Because when you do look and feel good, you have the confidence to recognize that you can resist the stuff that matters, and you can let go and stop resisting the stuff that matters. And that is what I'm going to leave you with. Spend a little bit of time allowing yourself to just be. And then maybe journal on what is the stuff that I really want, that I say I want, that I'm stopping myself from having. And what is the stuff that I am resisting and I am really proud of because it's getting me closer to where I say I want to be. Because the more you know you, the more you feel aligned with both your body and your mind, the more fun, the more joy, and the more easy and comfortable you are going to be just being you. And I'm going to leave you with this, as I usually do. We only have one life and one body as far as we know. Please look after it because it is looking after you. So let it. Bye-bye for now.